ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאצאכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. We come together to welcome in the Sabbath bride. We come together at a time when we are desperately in need of peace and calm within our lives and the lives of all those we love and hold dear wherever they are near to us. And so I invite you to join with me in lighting the Shabbat candles and also in welcoming the B'nai Shalom congregation of New Bern in North Carolina, who also share with us a Trebon scroll that we'll be reading from tomorrow. Not exactly the same, but from the same town. And we welcome you, and we know it's the middle of the day for you, so you may not be lighting the candles. But still, we hope that for all of us, we gain from it just a little bit of Sabbath peace. So we say together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. And if you are standing, please feel free to be seated as we again join our voices together. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Shamo v'zacho b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha, Ki mekor haberaha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof mahaseh b'mahashvat kila. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat ka'ala, B'nai Shabbat nekabela. Hitora ori, kiva oref kumi hori, ori, shidaberi. Kavod Adonai Allah ha'yichnikla. Lecha dodi אותי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך אותי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום העטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמונה העם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני. On this Shabbat, where we welcome all of those who are going to celebrate and commemorate our Czech and Slovak memorial scrolls Shabbat, we thought that we would dedicate the majority of the service to learning about the memorial scrolls trust itself, and also specifically a little bit more about our Kladno scroll, which is in a border here, which hopefully we'll be able to show you maybe tomorrow when we thought about that one. Absolutely. And definitely our Trebon scroll, which we'll be reading from tomorrow. We've had so many people who have never heard the story before, and so we are now going to abridge the liturgy of this Shabbat service with no apologies, so that we can learn more altogether. And we hope that you'll continue to post wherever you are, maybe about your knowledge of the scrolls. Maybe your community has a Czech or Slovak memorial scroll, and we'll write in about it. But for now, please rise. Baruch et Adonai, Amevorach. Baruch Adonai, Amevorach, Leolam Va'ed. Praise be the one to whom our praise is due.
We praise the Eternal One, to whom our praise is due forever.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Shem kavod malchuto, le'olam va'ed. Shem kavod malchuto, le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavecha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol ma'odecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzavacha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'lechtecha b'derech, u'v'shofpecha u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam le'od al yadecha, v'hayu letzotafot bein einecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'vish alecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach, u'hufia gitegilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach, u'hufia gitegilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips, that my mouth shall declare your praise. Eternal God, open up my lips, that my mouth shall declare your praise.
Let us praise Adonai, source of knowledge and light, from whom we draw wisdom and insight. Let us savor the fullness of each and every day and fill our souls with the treasure of Shabbat. And let us appreciate these distinctions: sacred from profane, charity from greed, purpose from drift. Let us affirm our covenant as God's people. Let us honor those who study Torah. Let us uphold the truth of ongoing revelation. Let us celebrate the glory of our tradition and draw refreshment from the wellspring of prayer. Let us respect tradition and encourage creative faith. And let us dress ourselves in the garments of God, compassion for the needy, embrace of the stranger, and then spread the canopy of peace over all the world. I invite you to take a few moments of silent prayer for peace.
May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Ose shalom bimromav, u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol bnei Adam. May the Most High, source of perfect peace, grant peace to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity. If you weren't already now seated, then please be so. And we now turn our thoughts to our Czech and Slovak memorial scrolls. And we welcome first Jeffrey Orenstein, the chair of the Memorial Scrolls Trust, to tell us more about the history of that collection.
My name is Jeffrey Orenstein. I'm chairman of the trustees of the Memorial Scrolls Trust. Welcome to this presentation that I hope you will enjoy. The Memorial Scrolls Trust, or MST, was created by the Westminster Synagogue to be responsible for 1,564 Torah and other scrolls that survived the Shoah. This is our story. Historians tell us of Jews living in Prague since the 10th century. By 1700, the city had the largest Jewish population in Central Europe, with some 11,000 Jews. To put this in perspective, there were some 1,000 Jews in London and possibly 100 in New York at that time. The Jewish communities of Bohemia Moravia were alternatively welcomed and expelled over the centuries, as in other countries. But by the middle of the 19th century, they no longer suffered from residential, demographic, or occupational restrictions, with over 350 communities, albeit averaging less than 50 Jews in each. However, from the 1850s, more and more people moved to the larger cities, and by 1939, there were less than 200 provincial communities remaining. The Nazis marched into Bohemia Moravia in March 1939 and immediately started to take over Jewish businesses and property, forcing the congregations to close, using the Jewish community administration to endorse their dehumanizing demands and decrees. Over 82,000 Jews were deported to the camps from Bohemia Moravia, of which 71,000 perished, and an additional 7,000 were murdered before deportation. However, an amazing collection of Judaica survived. In 1942, as a result of instructions sent by the Jüdische Kultusgemeinde in Prague to the communities of Bohemia Moravia, who packed the Torah scrolls, gold and silver filials, books and textiles, and sent them to the Central Jewish Museum in Prague. The volume was so great, the inventory of the museum, which had been in existence since 1906, expanded 14-fold. The museum stayed open until 1942, only for visits of many German high-ranking officers who were particularly interested in the books that were very valuable. This enormous collection, over 210,000 items, was catalogued by Jews who were deported once the work was finished, and unfortunately, few of whom survived. For many years it was believed the Germans had the idea to create a museum of an extinct race. However, in the Ark of Memory, published by the Jewish Museum Prague in 2012, it is suggested that the Jews of Prague were in fact responsible for preserving this legacy. Following the defeat of Germany in 1945, some 50 communities reopened, but in February 1948 there was a communist coup and all synagogues closed. The Jewish Museum became state-owned, and in 1958 approximately 2,000 scrolls were transferred to a damp warehouse that had once been the 18th century Muehlstein Synagogue. In 1963, the Artia, a state agency responsible for the sale of works of art, approached Eric Esterick, an American art dealer living in London, and asked if he wished to buy the Torah scrolls. Uninterested for himself, Eric approached Ralph Yablon, a generous philanthropist who agreed to buy all 1,564 scrolls offered on the condition they were brought to the Westminster Synagogue, of which he was a founding member, where they arrived on the 5th of February 1964. The scrolls, biodegradable, have been stored in poor conditions, uncared for over 20 years. Had they not been brought to London, there is no doubt that by the end of communist rule in 1989, few, if any, would have survived. Some months after the arrival of the scrolls, David Brand, an Orthodox sofer, knocked on the synagogue door, inquiring if any Torah required repairs. You can imagine his incredulity when he was shown 1,564 scrolls, of which very few were kosher, the vast majority requiring major attention, with many being unusable except as memorials. Recently, the MST has become much more active than previously, establishing or renewing contact with scrollholder communities as well as with new projects. In addition to our long-serving US director, we now have a very active US trustee and volunteers both in the United Kingdom and the United States. We are publishing a monthly newsletter, formerly quarterly, and post regular articles on our Facebook page. We give Zoom talks about the scrolls that are becoming increasingly popular. When the scrolls arrived in London, they were accompanied by over 400 binders and wimples, most of which are still in our museum. We are now working on a project linking these binders to the scrolls and towns they came from. Our Czech Torah webpage project has a goal of linking over 1,000 scroll holders around the world. So far, we've made 450 links to communities that have added pages to their websites. We've started collecting unpublished survivors' memoirs that will be added to our website, ensuring these stories are never forgotten. We published our first book, Light Beyond the Shadows by Sheila Pelley and Julius Miller, and we have now added a bookshop to our website dedicated exclusively to books with a Czech Jewish interest. In a few months, we should be publishing a new history of the story of the Czech scrolls. We encourage scroll gatherings. In 2019, we had 73 scrolls and over 800 people participating in a gathering at Temple Emmanuel, New York. Since 1964, some 1,400 Torah scrolls have been distributed to over 1,200 communities and organizations in countries around the world. Our scrolls are never sold, only allocated on permanent loan, to be returned to us if a community closes or merges. We still receive applications, and over the last year have allocated several scrolls in the United States, Canada, and Australia. Following a request from Olomouc, we allocated our first scroll to Czechia in 2017. Now the WUPJ have enabled us to restore a Torah to Kasher for Rabbi Max's community, Eitz Chaim, that we hope to take to Prague as soon as conditions allow. In Kohelet, we are told there's a season for everything under the sun, but not that contradictory emotions can overlap. For example, joy and sadness. And we have to figure out how to cope with both simultaneously. How apt this is with reference to these scrolls. Sadness at their history, joy at the meaningful use and the enthusiasm of our Czech Torah scroll holders. Whether you believe the Torah was written over a period by several authors, or whether you believe in Torah min hashamayim, the Sefer Torah is the one thing that binds all Jews together. Regardless of their denomination, all Jews respect the Torah. In addition, the Torah is known as the Old Testament, or Pentateuch, in Christianity, and the 5 books of Musa, or Al Tawrat, in Islam. We should always try to remind ourselves of what we have in common, rather than of what divides us, both as Jews and as human beings.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for that absolutely wonderful introduction to the collection that is maintained by the Memorial Scrolls Trust. And you beautifully trailered Sheila and Julius, whose book is on sale through the Memorial Scrolls Trust, who are now joining us to tell us more specifically about their research of the communities around the Czech Republic and specifically of interest to us, towns of Kladno and Trebon.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Andrew and Rabbi Aaron, for inviting us to share our journey to the towns in the Czech Republic that were collection points for the precious Torah scrolls. I'm Sheila Palais. I'm a photographer, and I live in the US in Sharon, Massachusetts.
Hello, everyone. Hello, friends. Hello, Andrew and Aaron, whom I both met a couple of times in Beit Simcha when I was a lay leader on Beit Simcha quite a long time ago. but I still have a nice vivid memories meeting you, both of you. And I'm Julius Miller, a Jewish genealogist based in Prague. It's my parnasa for the last 20 years. And when Sheila, through her friends, asked me to be her guide, I said, yeah, sure, I know quite a few of those places Sheila wanted to visit, but I never dreamed that it's gonna be such a different journey. And I got much larger picture of Jewish life in the pre-war Czechoslovakia and also after the war as well.
Okay, so now I'm going to share our screen so we can. Okay, so, and now we're going to go through our presentation. This is the cover of our book, and our book is called Light Beyond the Shadows, The Legacy of Czech Torah Scrolls and the Renewal of Jewish Life in Czechia. So today our talk is going to be about what inspired our journey and our book. And then we'll talk about Trzebon and Kladno. Some of you have visited Prague and Kolín, and you can see from this slide the Golden Alley of Kolín. The trip was inspired by my involvement with the Memorial Scrolls Trust. Our synagogue restored our Torah, our Czech Torah, and I was one of the photographers who photographed all the events during the year that it was being restored. And from that point on, many wonderful things happened in my life, and eventually I decided to go to the Czech Republic and photograph all of the collection points and see what was left Judaically. So as we journeyed through the Czech Republic, Julius and I decided that this was really worthy of a book. The book itself has about 200 photographs of about 50 towns, lots of annotations on throughout the book, and wonderful essays from people like Jeffrey and David Maxa, Rabbi Maxa, who you're going to hear from tomorrow, and Jill Maron, who is the wife of the Israeli ambassador to the Czech Republic, and many other wonderful people. And now Julius is going to talk a little bit about our journey.
So this is kind of map of our journey, but it's not about the geography, although it pictures most of the country except Sudetenland, because in Sudetenland, the first part of the country captured by the Germans, there were no collection points in Sudetenland because it happened half a year before. So those are places which we call collection points. There are 109 places we visited, there were a few more. And those places, as you can see, they are almost all over the country. And those collection points are not just dots on the map of our journey, but it's more like places where the Jewish communities were living very actively. And when the Nazi came to the country, those places became places of repression, humiliation, and final deportation. So this is also a map of suffering at the same time. We spent 15 weeks traveling throughout the country, and we visited quite a few places. And what we saw at the very beginning, it's my personal experience, I saw mostly pain and loss, but gradually, when we went through more and more towns and we met more and more people, we realized that there are different variety of ways how to commemorate the Jewish communities and victims of Shoah by the local people nowadays. We saw quite a few interesting and moving memorials, listing of the Jewish neighbors and listing places where the synagogue once stood. Then we so many projects running and going on now, run by the local students to commemorate the so-called missing neighbors. It's a very powerful project, and it's run in many, many towns throughout the whole country. And then also finally, we saw quite a few synagogues still standing there. I would say roughly 1/3 of the number before the war. And those synagogues are either kept by the local NGOs, we saw quite a few, or local municipalities with big enthusiasm and energy to save the places, even by individuals who bought the places as a ruins and restore them. And some of those are owned by the Jewish community and Jewish Federation of Jewish Communities in Prague.
So the first town that we're going to talk about is Červoň. We arrived on a kind of a rainy day, as you can see, and we entered through the town square on our way to the former synagogue. Julius had this great idea, which we used throughout the trip, and that is, as we entered the town, I photographed the town signs so that I could organize my photographs. I took thousands of photographs, and it really helped me organize them. When we approached the synagogue, which is actually owned by the Jewish community in Prague, you can see now that it's been converted into an apartment house. Next to it was the school, the Jewish school. The Jews themselves lived throughout the town, and this is the remnant of what is there today.
There are no Jews left in town whatsoever. And we just traced few remnants of the Jewish community here. In 1880, there were 3% of the town population were Jewish, and they gradually lowered before the war. And during the wartime, there were about 50 Jewish people in the whole town. You can see one example of a powerful way of commemorating the Shoah victims. It's so-called Stolpersteine. Maybe you've heard about that initiative started by the German sculptor a long time ago. And it's spread out all over Europe, and also the hundreds nowadays throughout the Czech Republic. Those are on the main square in front of the house where the Metzel family lived. Just briefly, Ludwig Metzel was the chairman who welcomed Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk on his visit to Třeboň in Czechoslovakia in 1920s. And he had 3 sons. He died before the war. His 3 sons, they all died in Holocaust. And you can see the 3 Stolperstein, the stumbling stones, lay down on their memory by the descendants. So we also learned one of those 3 brothers had 2 children who were able to escape and now living in Canada. So we also, and it's one example of what we faced and found throughout our journey. We also were able to find descendants and survivors.
And now let me just move this to the other side so that, okay. So here we are in Kladno, a major industrial town in the Czech Republic. It actually was the home to a huge steel mill that was closed. That's been closed, and all of the buildings now are being restored from the steel mill, and instead it's become a software company center, including a facility for production of Lego. Whoops, I'm sorry. The synagogue is right off the center of town, and it is an example of the close relationship of the Jewish community and the Hussite Church. Julius will tell you more about it.
Yeah. So this is the former synagogue, nowadays Hussite Church. which reflects somehow the special relationship between Czechs and Jews throughout the history, but maybe we can talk about it later. This is the place, the synagogue is located not far from Main Square. You can just go through a narrow street, and here we are. It's a very special story about the synagogue. 1939, the Hussites approached the Jewish leadership and suggested them to help them protect the site after the Germans occupied the country. So they even shared the same building for the prayers. The Jewish community was coming, the Jews were coming on Saturday, and Hussites were coming on Sunday, somehow protecting. And also it worked, although the Jews were not able to go there after 1941, but the Hussites kept the place and finally became their own sanctuary. So, and now in 1956, they were able to buy the house and take care of it and use it as their sanctuary nowadays.
There's a wonderful story that I just read about. One of the Jewish community leaders before the war wanted to make sure that the Torahs were saved, and what they did, with the help of the church, they opened a wall and stored all of the Torahs in the wall, and fortunately in a wall for safekeeping. And incredibly, the man who decided to do this survived the Holocaust, and they were able to remove all the Torahs, and from there they sent them to the Jewish Museum of Prague. So they were stored with all of the Czech Torahs that were eventually sent to London. So that was kind of a unique situation, and I thought it was important for all of you to know about it.
And also to show you the special relationship, there was a bilingual book published about, I think, 5 years ago by the local historian in Kladno Archives. And there's a wonderful book about all family members of the Jewish community, a lot of pictures and family trees. And it's really worth to go through because it gives you the full picture of a thriving Jewish community in Kladno before the war. This is now, we are in the interior of the former synagogue. Those pictures are in the book. They are page 78 and 79. If you are interested, you can have a look. So, and basically it tells you the whole book is structured by double pages for each town. So this is one example how we organize the book. On the left side, you can see the enthusiastic person who invited us and welcomed us to visit the place. She's curator of Hussite Church nowadays. And she told us about the contact between the Hussites and the Bet El in Fairfield, about the rededication of the Der Scroll from Kladno in 2008. A rabbi was coming to Kladno with his people, and they somehow keep in contact with the Fairfield congregation. And she was so friendly and welcoming. So whoever is interested, I will be happy to put you in contact with her. You can start talking to her and knowing each other if you are interested. They do trips to Israel, so they are very open-minded and welcoming.
One of the most poignant parts of this particular visit to Kladno was we walked to the spot where the collection point for people who were going to go on a train to Terezin. And there's a very large plaque on the wall commemorating the transports and the people who were transported. Our trip wasn't all sadness and because it became a journey of hope, and also, it was a journey of the past, but it evolved into a journey of hope because we saw new congregations and all of the restorations are continuing. It's quite incredible. Municipalities are raising funds to restore synagogues, and there's a a great interest among Czechs to learn about Jewish heritage. I was amazed in this world of anti-Semitism. It almost doesn't exist in the Czech Republic. It's quite extraordinary. And there is a strong renewal of Jewish life. Yom HaShoah is celebrated every year. And there are back orders of installing Stolperstein around the country. Twice a year, the Stolperstein are installed. And if you wanted to have Stolperstein installed, you'd probably have to wait a couple of years before it could actually happen, because they have such a long list of people who want to install them. So what's our book really about? And all I can say is, from my perspective, it became a book of, we felt that it was important to combine the memories of the Shoah with life before the Shoah and also life after the Shoah, because the Czechs are incredibly resilient, and we just saw compassion everywhere. And so the four descriptions that I feel in my heart are resilience, compassion, humanity, and survival. And I feel that this book is really important to share with our children and our grandchildren, because it provides a venue for us to keep our collective memory of the Shoah alive. And I know that Julius has some thoughts about this too, so please add it.
So that was very interesting for me as well, because except few places where I didn't find anything, almost everywhere where we went during our journey, it was kind of revealing for me. We saw examples of a kind of burning ember underneath the surface. And when you know how to ask the right questions, the local people would tell you how they appreciate, how they treasure about the relationship to Israel, and also how to care about the Jewish heritage. And it was astonishing, visible and palpable that in most of the places we found initiatives trying to at least commemorate. And as Sheila shared with you, Sheila said we also visited, communities alive. So the whole book reflects the journey as a process. And I'm very grateful that I was part of the process. And also it showed you the special relationship between the Czechs and the Jews, because Czechs suffered throughout the history also by the Habsburgs, because they were mainly Protestants. You can find quite a few resemblances between the Czechs and the Jews. The oppression, the tragic moments in history, exile as well, after 30 years war, and later again and again and again, and also a special sense of humor. So I would say those things are making some kind of special glue between those two nations. And it's still visible nowadays. And I'm proud that's the situation nowadays in our country.
I just want to breeze through some photographs, and I'm going to do this very quickly because I know we're ending our time, but I just wanted you to have a glimpse of the rest of the country, and I'm going to do this very quickly. And now we're back in Prague, and I just want to thank you all for inviting us to share this incredible, share our journey with you. Thank you so much.
The chance to present it to you.
Bye-bye.
Sheila and Julius, thank you so much indeed. And we hope that everybody will come to Kiddush and meet you and Jeffrey, and perhaps those from the Eitz Chaim community from Prague who might be with us tonight. Perhaps there's even some from B'nai Shalom in New Bern as well who might like to come as well. The details will come up in a few moments. We now turn to Kaddish, though, and where we can remember all of those that we are thinking of at these times. We're going to be reading the list of our own yard sites. I'm sure many will have their own to recall at this moment in time. And as you can see, we now are listing the 24 names who were in the deportation from Trebon. Another 52 names are on the list, but from surrounding villages. All were taken to České Budovice for onward transport to Hagibor Transit Camp in Prague, and from there to Terezin. Only 2 survived and returned to Trebon. Neither of the survivors are on the above list because they were of mixed parentage and must have been deported later. One was Dr. Wilemski, who became the last Jew in Trebon. Would you please rise?
We also recall the names of those in our community whose yahrzeit falls at this time. Andrew Grossman, the brother of Nigel. Beryl Michelson, mother of Jane Vugler and David, grandmother of Josh, who just posted. Melissa Taylor Sachs is remembering Nana Pat. David Cooper, the father of Adele Slifkin. Emmanuel Mann, the father of Peter. Hilda Shine, the cousin of Michael Gordon. Marie Lux, the grandmother of Leslie Moss. Martha Michelson, the mother of Irene and Martin, and grandmother to Martha. Ruth Weil, the mother of Celia Naval and Maya. Santa Weg, the mother of Walter. We are saddened by the recent death of Jeremy Friedman, husband of Louise and a vice president of liberal Judaism, and a great supporter of the Czech heritage. A member at South London Liberal, attended many of the Goldstein tours to join us on trips to the Czech Republic. So we remember them and say, Zichronam livracha, may their memory be a source of blessing. And we say together, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, B'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mavarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ah v'tromam v'itnaseh, v'tada v'taleh v'talal shemei d'kudeshah b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran balma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol b'nei Adam, v'imru Amen. May great peace descend from heaven, and abundant life be granted to us and all Israel. And let us say, Amen.
Please be seated. We hope that you'll join us tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. for our service where we will be rededicating our Trebon scroll, having just had a few bits of running repairs to the Atzei Chaim, to the wood part of the scroll. Dad is going to provide an introduction into the NPLS story behind our journeys to Trebon. And we also welcome Rabbi David Maxer to deliver the sermon about how the Torah Scrolls truly inspired him to take him down the path to the rabbinate. In the evening, there's actually 2 Havdalahs we might mention. At 6 p.m., you may wish to join with the communities of the IMPJ, the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, to join in solidarity with them and to come together more, to be together, to hold the communities and to show that we are truly thinking of them.
And we'll make sure that the details of that will be posted on our Facebook pages,
And tomorrow morning we can
and
pop it up there as
tomorrow morning
well.
we'll put it there. Yeah.
And then at 7 p.m. our own community one as well. On Sunday evening is then our Tikkun Lev Shavuot. At 6:30 you have the opportunity to hear stories of our own congregants. And then at 8 p.m. to join together with Brit Olam, our twin community in Kiryat Ono. We helped them to buy a Torah scroll. It was a Yemenite Torah scroll, so very different. And the Rabbi, David Abraham, hopefully everything will go to plan, will be showing it to us as well.
And also that will be a wonderful opportunity to meet congregants there and chat with them about how they're all doing right now. It's all a difficult time right now for everyone.
And recognising that and the need for us to have a little bit of peace as well. A song where the words are familiar, but the tune, well, you'll pick it up pretty quickly. Hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Titkabel zlotachon uve'utachon dichol Yisrael kodam avuchon divishmaima ve'imru amen. May the prayers and supplications of the house of Israel everywhere be accepted by their loving Creator. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.